When I opened the wedding invitation, my hands shook, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. My name was there, yes, but only in tiny, almost invisible print, under the word guest. Not a word about being the maid of honor, the role my best friend had promised me months ago. I stared at the card on my kitchen counter, the soft hum of the refrigerator filling the silence around me. The smell of freshly brewed coffee lingered, warm and comforting, but even that familiar scent couldn't soothe the tight knot in my chest. I ran my fingers over the embossed lettering, over the delicate floral designs that my friend, Clara, had chosen herself, and tried to make sense of it. How had we gone from planning bouquets and choosing dresses together to this erasure of all I'd done for her? The envelope felt heavier than it should have, heavier than the thin paper could ever account for. It carried more than ink and paper. It carried betrayal, and a sharp sting I hadn't been prepared for. I sank into the chair by the counter, my coffee untouched, and let the moment wash over me. My throat ached. I wanted to call her immediately, to demand an explanation, but something held me back. The rational part of me whispered, wait. Don't let anger guide you. Clara and I had been inseparable for over a decade. We met in college, two nervous freshmen thrown together by a shared love of literature and iced coffee. Over the years, we celebrated birthdays, job promotions, heartbreaks, and holidays together. She knew the shape of my tears. I knew the timbre of her laughter. We weren't just friends. We were mirrors for each other, reflecting our best and worst selves. When she asked me to be her maid of honor, it felt like the culmination of that lifetime of shared experiences. I remember the day clearly. She was sitting cross-legged on her living room floor, surrounded by pink and white wedding catalogs, a notebook full of sketches for floral arrangements in her lap. I can't imagine anyone else by my side, she said, her voice soft but resolute. Will you do it? Be my maid of honor? I had said yes immediately, without hesitation. I spent hours poring over ideas for her bridal shower, designing invitation templates, drafting heartfelt speeches. I even coordinated a weekend getaway with her family and my closest friends to plan a bachelorette celebration she'd remember forever. Every detail, every suggestion, every plan, I had poured myself into it, not because I wanted recognition, but because I loved her. Our friendship was the kind that thrived on small gestures and long conversations over late-night snacks. I knew her quirks, how she twirled her hair when nervous, the way she hummed when she cooked, how her laughter could fill a room without ever being loud. I thought I knew her completely, but that little card on the counter made me question every shared secret and every promise. It wasn't the first time lately that I felt a flicker of unease around Clara. At first, it was subtle. She seemed distant during our coffee dates, her eyes darting to her phone when I spoke, her laughter slightly forced. She started to cancel plans more often, sometimes giving vague excuses. I told myself it was just stress, wedding planning stress, and I tried not to read too much into it. But the card, that tiny, cruel omission, pulled all of those little moments into sharp focus. I remembered the way she had smiled at me last week, the smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and the offhand remark she'd made about everyone needing to find their own spotlight. Could it be that simple jealousy? Or had there been a deeper, hidden resentment I'd missed all along? I decided to confront her gently, the way we had always communicated. I called her, my voice measured but steady. Hey Clara. I got the wedding invitation, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I wanted to check something, about the maid of honor part. There was a pause on the other end of the line, a silence that stretched too long, filled with unspoken words. Then she laughed nervously, a sound that used to comfort me but now felt hollow. Oh right, she said finally. About that. Her voice trailed off, hesitant. She admitted reluctantly that she'd changed her mind about having me as maid of honor. She blamed it on family dynamics, subtle insecurities, and the pressure to please everyone else involved. She claimed it wasn't personal, that it wasn't about me, but her words, delivered in that wavering tone, felt like knives. I remember sitting there, phone in hand, the kitchen around me fading into a blur. Her excuses felt fragile, transparent, a mask covering a truth I wasn't ready to face. The truth that my best friend had chosen someone else, that my investment of time, emotion, and trust had been quietly dismissed. I asked questions, each one trembling with hurt. Was it the money? The attention? Was it something I did? She avoided my eyes, and her voice was soft, almost a whisper. It's complicated. I needed to feel in control. That phrase, needed to feel in control, reverberated in my mind. I realized then that her insecurities had been quietly shaping decisions that directly impacted me, that my role in her life, even as her closest friend, was negotiable. The betrayal was sharp, like a sudden cold wind on a summer day, and it left me reeling. The clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed our conversation. I felt my hands clench into fists, not in anger, but in the need to hold on to something solid, something I could control. My mind raced through every plan I had made for her wedding, every sleepless night I had spent crafting perfect surprises, every heartfelt conversation where I had promised to support her unconditionally. And now, all of it seemed invisible. And yet, even in the pain, a stubborn spark remained. I wouldn't let this betrayal define me. I couldn't just step aside quietly. I needed to find a way to honor the bond we had shared while reclaiming my dignity, to create a space for myself in a celebration that had almost erased me. I didn't attend Clara's wedding the way I had imagined in my daydreams, standing beside her in matching robes, carrying the bouquet she had chosen with trembling excitement. But I did attend on my own terms. After the initial confrontation and weeks of silent hurt, I realized that my grief wasn't about the wedding day itself. It was about being seen, being valued, and being treated with the respect our friendship deserved. So, I decided to create a role for myself that wasn't dictated by her insecurities. I became the silent guardian of my own dignity. I crafted a speech that didn't mention betrayal, didn't demand recognition, but quietly celebrated our history, our shared laughter, the storms we'd weathered together. The morning of the wedding, I stood at the back of the small chapel, the scent of lilies thick in the air. Clara didn't see me in the traditional maid of honor position. Instead, I watched from afar, notebook in hand, heart steady. I whispered my congratulations as the ceremony unfolded, letting each word feel like a salve on the wound she had left. When it came time for speeches, I spoke softly, but my words carried weight. I didn't need to shout to be heard. I spoke of friendship, the kind that survives distance, misunderstanding, and even betrayal. I spoke of love that endures in many forms, of lessons learned from both joy and pain. The room was quiet, and in that quiet, I felt the presence of every memory Clara and I had shared. I honored our past without demanding the recognition I had once thought I needed. And in doing that, something shifted inside me. I realized that true friendship doesn't always look like a title, a card, or a position in a ceremony. True friendship is about the connection that survives even when promises falter. It's about holding your head high, even when others choose not to see you. After the wedding, I sat on the edge of the empty dance floor, the soft hum of music echoing around me. My hands traced the edges of the invitation card one last time. The sting was still there, but it had softened into something else, clarity. I forgave, not for her sake, but for mine. I forgave because holding on to resentment would have kept me invisible in my own life. Clara and I didn't return to the same closeness we once had. Our friendship had changed, as all human relationships do when tested by honesty and ego. But I carried forward the love I had for her in a gentler, wiser form. I understood her flaws without excusing the hurt. And more importantly, I understood myself. My worth is not defined by someone else's recognition. Now, months later, I look back at that moment with a quiet gratitude. It was painful, yes, but it taught me something invaluable. Boundaries are acts of self-love, and reclaiming your space is never selfish. I learned to honor my own heart first, and in doing so, I found a peace I never could have expected. Would you have stood your ground the way I did? Or would you have quietly stepped aside? Sometimes the most courageous act isn't raising your voice. It's holding it steady, even in the storm. If my story resonates with you, I invite you to share your own experiences of friendship, betrayal, or standing up for yourself in the comments below. Let's remember that our stories, no matter how painful, hold lessons worth sharing. And as always, thank you for sitting with me in this quiet reflection, for walking through the hurt, the disappointment, and ultimately, the healing. May we all find the strength to honor our own hearts, even when others fail to do so.